Hi, my name's Adam Huttler. I'm the founder and executive director of Fractured Atlas. Fractured Atlas is a national nonprofit. We help artists succeed as entrepreneurs. So we provide support for all of the kind of business aspects of creativity. We help raise money, we help with insurance, technology, professional development, all kinds of technical assistance. We help you find space. We serve a national community that includes over 250,000 artists and arts organizations in every state across the country. So what advice do I have for aspiring arts entrepreneurs who are just getting started out? I think there's two things that really come to mind. One is, first off, recognize that you are in fact an entrepreneur. You are in fact a small business. Probably most of your education is focused on craft, which is great. You may be very talented. I applaud you. But if you're not also tuned in to the business side of your work and the business context in which your work is made, you're at a significant disadvantage. So that's number one. Number two, though, is kind of don't overdo it. Right? The goal is not to become a marble-columned institution. The goal is to make great work, and I think people sometimes lose sight of that fact when they start focusing too much on the institution and not enough on the art. So look at, especially when you're starting out, simpler, lighter weight, more flexible models for creating and promoting your work. So you might look at fiscal sponsorship. Instead of creating a new 501c3, you might look at starting an LLC, for example, and take advantage of the resources that are out there to give yourself as much time and energy as possible to focus on making art. So I think the only time, to my way of thinking, that it really makes sense to become a 501c3, to create a new 501c3 corporation, is if your budget is large enough to justify it. And that's, I think, a higher threshold than most people might think. Our research suggests it's somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year before it really starts to be cost effective to have an independent 501c3. But even maybe more importantly than that, for most artists, the work is very closely tied to them, to their artistic vision. It's the, Joe Schmo dance company that exists to perform Joe Schmo's choreography. Well, it doesn't make sense to build a permanent, perpetual institution around something that is closely associated and closely affiliated, and in fact, sort of hermetically bound to that one artist's vision. It's kind of it's almost a contradiction. So I think as long as it's artist-driven work that is really connected to one or more specific individuals, it really doesn't make sense most of the time to create a corporation. When it does make sense to create a corporation, specifically a 501c3, is if you're operating at a big scale and your mission goes beyond the artistic vision and output of any specific individual or individuals. So fiscal sponsorship is a great option for artists or very small organizations that are just starting out, or frankly, those that are going to be doing work for a long time that don't want to have the overhead and complexity, which is considerable, associated with running an independent 501c3. Another advantage is that it gives you a little bit more flexibility. I think these days, most artists don't think of themselves as nonprofit artists or commercial artists. It's kind of an increasingly blurry dividing line between those two worlds. And so for artists who might want to move fluidly back and forth between more commercial work and more sort of non-commercial work, fiscal sponsorship can be a way to ensure that they can continue to access charitable dollars where appropriate, when supporting the non-commercial work, without limiting their ability to go make a blockbuster action movie if that's what's on their path. So that's one issue. And then another thing to keep in mind is, of course, corporations by default own all of the intellectual property that they produce. And if it's a nonprofit corporation, it owns the intellectual property, and there are no shareholders. So you, as the artist, have no ownership by default of the work that you're producing in the context of that 501c3 corporation. Now, there may be complicated agreements that you could form, or contracts that you could form with the corporation to have some sort of transfer of IP, and that does happen. But it's complicated, and it's easy to screw it up, and sometimes you end up in court. One of the things I like about fiscal sponsorship is that it allows artists to retain the ownership of their own work, either directly or through something like an LLC that they own, which I think a lot of artists, I think that's important to them, with good reason. The strongest piece of advice I can give to people kind of just starting out is no fear, is jump into it. Especially, you're coming right out of college or grad school, you've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of ideas. Now is the time to be taking risks and to be trying things and to be falling flat on your face, because you will, and that's okay. Once you've got, kids and a mortgage and all these things, it becomes a lot harder to take those risks. So, who cares if you don't know exactly how it's going to work, or if you don't know exactly what it is, what all the steps look like and in what order. You'll figure it out. And we can help. So go to www.fracturedatlas.org, become a member. That's probably your very first step, and we can help you figure some of this stuff out. But most importantly, seriously, just jump in, and you'll learn as you go.